Welcome to Shrink to Shrink, a psych view on the films with Dr. Colleen Mullen and Courtney Calkins, bringing lessons learned from the big screen into our own lives.
Well, hello. This is Courtney, and I'm here with Colleen. Come on in, Colleen.
Hi, Courtney. How
Hello.
are you today?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
Good to see you.
So, do you want to fight?
Yes, and I just showed you I'm all beat up. I got a big bruise.
That's
and
right.
I was out jogging on the beach today. I was giving jabs and punches as I went down the boardwalk.
All right. You have the towel around your neck, and were you looking for a bunch of stairs you could run up?
I actually do stair runs.
See?
We have lots of them around.
When you get to the top, do you throw your hands in the air and turn a
Always.
360?
You know, always.
Yeah.
And
Everybody does. I mean,
right? You can't help it. If you grew up with the legend we're going to be talking about today,
yeah.
you can't help it.
No, I remember as a kid, I actually would drink raw eggs because, Rocky drank raw eggs. So that made sense until I learned about botulism and, different infections you can get. But it didn't hurt Rocky. He was tough.
Right.
So we are reviewing the movie Creed today. And it is, like I think you said it in your email, Rocky 15 or whatever it is. It's not an original story, but it's almost like an epic. It's part of our culture. I mean, you could play the Rocky song and everybody knows what it is. You talk about the story of Rocky, everybody knows what it is. So there's a lot of universal themes that we're going to encounter through the most recent movie, Creed. And, Now, I'm a guy, I watched Rocky a lot. I wanted to, punch meat and do stuff like that. But, you was it as much of in your world as it was mine?
Well, I grew up, I have a brother who's very close in age to me and a couple of other brothers around, a little bit younger. And so, like, when Rocky was out and popular, there were lots of guys around, and so I went and tagged along with my brothers to the movies and things like that. So I saw probably the first 3 Rockies,
That's enough.
like as everybody did. And then after that, because what is there, like 6 or 7?
Yeah, you're pushing me. But the first 3 are you got Clubber Lang with Mr. T, and you got, the rematch of Rocky and
the
Apollo
big blonde
Creed.
guy, whoever that is.
Drago or whatever he was, the Russian guy. Yeah. Right. So those are the ones, and then they kind of all fell off. Well, as if you believe the critics, the Rocky series comes back in this one. It's actually pretty well critically acclaimed, and although to me it's like the new Star Wars. It's like the new Star Wars is just a retelling of the original Star Wars in a more modern day way, which this does.
Well, I like this one, and as we do with all the episodes, we're gonna do lots of clips and talk about them. But this one, for the most part, when you suggested this movie, I did think, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to watch like a 2-hour fighting movie.
Yeah.
And I wasn't really looking forward to it, but I really liked this movie. I thought it was good. I liked all the storyline stuff. I liked how they portrayed Rocky, and we're going to talk all about that. And so I really enjoyed this movie.
Yeah, not so much a chick flick or traditional, but there was really not as much boxing as there was in a lot of them. So we're gonna try to discuss this movie, finding the themes, without actually talking about any boxing. I mean, it doesn't really matter who wins or loses at the end. It's about the journey, and that's what this is about. So what are some of the themes that you kind of noticed as we prepared for this show?
The biggest thing that comes through is living against the legacy, or growing up where you have like the legacy of those greater in the family who came before you, who have made a name for themselves, who, whether they became famous or they're just really well known for what they do, like that kind of, tough climb that you have to make when you're growing up, always living against the legacy of your father or your brother or your mother in families like that. So that was one of the big themes. And then dedication to goals. The main character, Adonis, comes out specifically to meet Rocky and to be trained because he wants to make his mark. He wants to do what his father has done. When Rocky starts training him, it really takes on that theme of the original Rocky movies, with all the hard training and the crazy stuff of driving along and running along with the van and things like that, hitting the goals. What did you find, Courtney?
Well, the main one for me, it was almost like hard work pays off. That hope that if there's something I can do, and it's easy to do when at least when I think about it, through working out, you can't always be successful in money or whatever, but you can always make yourself work hard. And the fact that also I think everybody has kind of like a rags to riches dream. I mean, heck, look at the lottery. People play the lottery all the time because they have hope, even
Right.
though it's a fantasy and a joke, but really, a lot of people want to be plucked from obscurity and put into the limelight. And I think that's something that is one of those perennial themes that I think it happens through all the Rocky movies. But I think the reason that Rocky movies are popular is because we want to relate to it. We want to think that someone's going to be watching and pay attention to us and give us what we rightly deserve, which is, to be discovered in some fashion or another.
Right, and everybody loves the underdog.
Yeah.
You want the guy who fought against everything to win, and that's what we've got going on in this movie.
So Adonis gets a hard start, and he meets what turns out to be, it's Felicia Rashad, Mrs. Cosby. It comes to visit him in jail, and this is their initial conversation.
Why were you fighting?
I'm not going to another group home.
I'm not from a group home.
You're a social worker.
No, I am not a social worker.
Nigga said something about my mom, so I beat his ass.
I'm sorry about your mother. I know what it's like to lose someone. When your father died, I was angry for so long. I hurt myself, pushed family away.
I don't have no father.
What did you say?
I said I don't have no father.
That's not true. He passed before you were born, but you had a father.
You knew him?
He was my husband. Adonis, I would like it very much if you would come and stay with me.
What a scene, So he's in juvenile hall, about 12 years old or so.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about you, but I've worked with kids just like him. And when they did that scene, it's dead on. That is the conversation. The kids are geared up and they want to go, don't come talk to me. You're just going to take me to another group home. And I thought that was a really powerful, it was a moving scene. And that's how the movie pretty much opens. They really hit the nail on the head with that, with what they captured there.
Yeah, you and I both worked with kids through group homes and in those settings. And, you always think you're going to be the different, professional in their lives as a therapist or a social worker or whatever. And these kids, they've seen it all, and they've been around the block, and they know what's coming next, and they don't want to build a relationship with you. And so that was his standoff. So it kind of struck me a little bit to my professional role, where he says, you're a social worker. He goes, I am not a social. It's like, that was like an insult, which it really is. It is an insult when you're not a social worker and, you're actually the stepmom. And, I think that's where his first time being plucked from obscurity, right? Because that doesn't happen. Most of the time family members have come and gone by the time a kid's sitting in juvenile hall for the second or third time.
Right. And so all he knows is that his father's dead, and he's the illegitimate child of an affair. Mm-hmm. So had his father been alive, right, this would be stepmom. And so he doesn't even know that who she is or that she existed, and she comes and finds him, and as you said, plucked from obscurity, and provides a very nice life for him. That's what we find out after.
Well, when we go to the second clip, basically we skip over all of his growing up, which, as you and I both know, that's a very, very difficult part of the process. The fact that he makes it through, basically what happens is she raises him. He goes to college. He gets a 9 to 5 behind a desk. And so he tries it, and he does very well. Most kids don't assimilate that easily. Usually you got the runaways, and then they continue the same behavior because of the early trauma and the loss of family members. They just don't have the base core of that a family gives you when you're growing up. So he would go into, in this case it would be Felicia Rashad or his stepmom's house, and there would be trouble along the way. The odds are he's running away, he's getting in trouble at school, but he makes it. He goes to school, finds the traditional path, tries his hand at it, and then comes to her and wants to make a change.
Right, but on the side, he's already been boxing in the background, and she doesn't know it. Right,
yeah, he's been doing that it's almost like it's in his blood, which
yes.
I guess it is. If boxing can be in your blood, it's in his. So here we go, where he talks to her about his desires.
Hey.
Hey.
How you doing?
Doing good. I just came home and wanted to talk to you.
Yeah?
I quit my job. Yeah, no.
Where'd you get this? Mexico?
It's not that bad.
It's not that bad. I ought to knock you out myself. You know how many times I had to carry your father up these stairs because he couldn't walk?
Yes.
How many times I had to wipe his ass because he couldn't use his hands? Is that what you want? No, you want brain damage. Yeah, you do. You want to be so brain damaged you can't form a sentence.
I can get hurt doing anything.
Apollo didn't get hurt, he got killed. People get killed. I didn't take you in for you to go backwards. You're better than this.
I'm leaving soon. I'm going to be fighting full time now. So I want to tell you face to face.
You are your father's son. And you're part of him. But it doesn't mean you have to be him.
I'm going to call you.
Listen, you want to be in somebody's ring? You don't have to call me.
I think that is my favorite line of the movie. Just shows just how, when you love someone and you're watching them do something that you truly believe is going to be the end of them, and you're helpless, you almost have to say, you know what, just don't bother. Don't tell me about it. I don't want to know, because it's too painful to listen otherwise to it. And I thought when she says, don't call me if you're going to be in someone else's ring, I love that line.
Yeah, it's almost like, well, I mean, I have a 17-year-old, and my sphere of influence is quickly narrowing, and so I get to the point sometimes where it's like, okay, you're going to do what you're going to do. I mean, I've raised you how I think you should, what your values should be and the choices you should make. But in the end, it's your decision, and I don't have to be happy about it. And I hope that you know about my feelings about it. But in the end, like I say, he wouldn't want to go to college or whatever. It's like, I guess I can't control it. And that's what she was dealing with.
Yeah, and but she comes from also having lived, like, as she says, carrying the husband up the stairs, and and then he's dead, and she gets this opportunity to raise the son. And I'm sure as many as as it goes in families, he must have resembled him through his life, been a reminder of him for her, all that. And then when he's going off and saying, I'm going to go and repeat and do what he did, just so painful.
One of the lines through that quote was, "You don't have to be him."
Right, you have him in you, but you don't have to be him.
Right, you can make different choices.
Right, and that is where that theme starts to come out. He was raised, pulled out of foster care, so who knows what he was doing before that, who raised him, and how he got into foster care. But then, and that's a tough go at things. And then he's raised by her, has this good life, and grows up with this, legacy in his family, his direct link to his father. And I'm not sure. It might be on the male side of things, but I think any kid really, when they grow up like that, there's that feeling of, I need to do better. or I need to prove myself even more so because no one's going to give me a chance if they just think I'm so-and-so's kid.
Right, which is one of the things that he struggles against here. He doesn't even want to be called Creed.
That's right.
Oh, he doesn't want. He wants to make it on his own, and I understand that. But from my perspective, at 50, I'm like, use every advantage you can get. Build on the family getting you a job with a friend of the family, so you can get out there and get in the workforce and get to meet people. But some people do; they have that independent way, and they want to do it on their own. And maybe I'm just looking for the easy way or the cheat way. But I see how important it is to stand up for someone or to have someone backing you in order to get you to the next level. And I don't see it as, well, I want to do it all on my own. I say, hey, use every advantage you can get.
Right. It's not a handout. The way you're talking about, it's not a handout. It is a door opening. And it's okay to let someone open the door for you. Doesn't mean you're guaranteed an opportunity. It just means, hey, you can come in here because, maybe you've got this name, or we believe that, we loved your dad, so we want to talk to you, kind of thing.
Right. And boxing is one of the things where you can't, if you lose, 15 fights in a row, I don't care what your name is.
That's right.
Whereas in the real world, people are like, oh, I'll give him a break. He's such and such's kid. But okay, so now we got the story is starting to ramp up, and we're starting to see Creed or Adonis, which to me was kind of a turnout. I liked his name Donnie because anytime you put the name Adonis on somebody, you think this. I mean, he was cut. He was physically fit. He was chiseled, but that's a big beauty.
Right.
Thing to stand up to. Yeah. So I had to do kind of like a retrospective just because I was such a big Rocky fan early on in my high school years. So I put together a compilation of some Rocky moments, which is about 2.5 minutes, and then we'll come back because in the following clip there is Adonis is going to meet Rocky. So before we get to that,
I love that you did that. I can't wait to hear the whole thing.
Well, this kind of takes us through several of the movies, avoiding hopefully the bad ones. So here we go.
Hi, my name is Rocky Balboa, the Italian Stallion. They say I'm the American dream. Wait a minute. I'd like to explain something. I ain't punchy. I got what you call a relaxed brain, but I ain't punchy, It's just the way I talk here.
Is this a common training method? I mean, do other fighters pound raw meat?
No, I think I invented it. Yeah.
You catch this thing, you can catch grease lightning. Ready?
Yeah, well, I'd rather eat it than chase it. It ain't very mature,
listen,
but if you say
well,
so.
Neither are you very mature. Now listen, get this thing.
A fighter ain't a farmer. I can't see nothing. Gotta open my eye. Come here, miss.
I don't want to do it.
Well, come here. Come here. You stop this fight, I'll kill you.
What's the truth, damn it?
I'm afraid, all right? You want to hear me say it? You want to break me down? All right, I'm afraid. For the first time in my life, I'm afraid. Want to ring the bell? All right. Ding, ding.
I'll bust you out.
Go for it. I see 3 of them out there.
Get the one in the middle. Right. Hit the one in the middle.
Yeah.
Let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. Now, if you know what you're worth, now go out and get what you're worth. But you gotta be willing to take the hits and not pointing fingers saying you ain't where you wanna be because of him or her or anybody. Cowards do that, and that ain't you. You're better than that.
A lot of people come to Vegas to lose. I did.
It's already over.
Ain't nothing over till it's over.
What's that from, the 80s?
It's probably in the 70s.
I want to say one thing to my wife who's home. Yo, Adrian! Adrian!
I think we could do a whole show just on those clips.
Can't help but remember different the movies when you hear those. Yo,
Yeah.
Adrian.
Yeah, I mean, how do you? I mean, that's
Anytime I hear Rocky Balboa, inside my head, I hear Yo, Adrian.
Ain't nothing is over. Yeah, I wanted to propose to my wife like he did, because I do admit that I practically memorized the first movie. He's like, Adrian, I was wondering if maybe you wouldn't mind marrying me very much. I mean, that's the way he proposed. It's like, okay, just that the guy. I mean, we could. There were so many inspirational speeches when I was going through that, all putting those together. I'm like, man, Rocky is all about creating an inspiration within the viewer, and I think this one does it similarly. So we have Adonis going to find a trainer, and of course he goes to. And I didn't even notice this. You noticed it, that Rocky is running a restaurant called Adrian's.
Yes.
Yeah. So here's where he connects with Rocky, or Adonis connects with Rocky for the first time.
I heard about a third fight between you and Apollo. Behind closed doors. That true?
How'd you hear about that?
Who won?
It's kind of a secret. What'd you say your name was?
Don.
Okay. Well, the girl said you wanted to talk about something?
Yeah, I want to talk to you about training me.
Training? I don't do that stuff no more. Sorry about that. Listen, it's getting kind of late, kid, so I'm gonna close up.
How good was he?
Apollo? Yeah, he's great. He's a perfect fighter. Ain't nobody ever better.
So how'd you beat him?
Time beat him. Time, takes everybody out. It's undefeated.
I want you to train me. All right? I need somebody solid, and who else better to go to? All right? You at least owe me that.
I can tell the way you talk. You've been to school, so I figure you got some brains. Why would you want to pick a fighter's life when you don't have to? If Apollo was around, he would tell you that too.
Well, he ain't around. I've been fighting my whole life. I ain't got a choice.
It's always about a choice. I was in the ring. I saw how it went down. That fight should have been stopped. I should have stopped it.
Maybe he wanted to go out like a fighter. Maybe you did exactly what he wanted.
I think he'd rather be here, talking with you.
So in the first part of that clip, it was powerful, and you made a note of it, and I did also, that time is undefeated.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we all have to struggle with that. That's our existential view.
Right. At some point, we just don't have enough of it, and it's never enough. On a daily basis, we can feel it. Like I need more than 24 hours in a day to get everything done. And then, of course, as life goes on, and like that with athletes, there is time limitations on their careers. So, like Rocky says, Adonis says, how did you beat him? And he said, time. Time took him out. I thought that scene was powerful also in that after all that build up with those clips that we just went through, that Adonis shows up at this quiet, dark Italian restaurant in Philadelphia, and here's this formerly great, well, I guess he's still great, a great athlete, great boxer, living by himself in the apartment behind the restaurant named after his dead wife. I felt that Adonis needed Rocky as much as Rocky needed Adonis.
Yeah, and in true Rocky fashion, anytime he runs into someone, he says, I don't have a choice. He says, oh, you always have a choice. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, what you and I work with folks on a daily basis. You may not like the other choice, but there's always a choice. Right? I mean, right. I could not go pick up my kid from school. I could not take him to the doctor. I could not go get my own physicals. I'm making choices all the time, and I'm not even realizing that they're a choice, because to me, they're no choice. But I think a lot of our clients get stuck in, well, this is the way I have to do it. Well, maybe, but you do have a choice. You could always not do something or do something different. You could pick up tomorrow and never go to the same job. Now, that probably wouldn't work out well for you, but I think it's when people feel like they don't have a choice, or there's not two good choices, that they feel stuck in their life, and that's when they get down and depressed.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, that when we don't perceive it as two good choices, right?
Yeah.
that we get stuck, because then you go, well, then it's like the lesser of two evils.
Right.
You know, if you don't like either choice even, but you have to make them.
Right, which happens all the time. I mean,
yeah,
that's when people say, oh, well, you have a lot of pressure in your work, you're dealing with a lot of people's lives, and I'm like, yes, but the hardest time I have, and I tell this to our interns too, it's like, the hardest time I have is when I don't know if I've done everything that I should do or can do in my role with the client. It's once I know that I've done what I'm supposed to do, I can kind of let it go. But it was earlier on in my career when I would go home and I call it, my clients would jump in my head. You know, they're not invited. You know, but I start thinking about it in my off time. And it was primarily those times where I don't feel like I either did everything I could, or that there was a lot more that I could have done, but I just wasn't skilled enough or knowledgeable enough or didn't know the right resources to give them in order to do my full job. And since I've gotten to a place where it's like, I pretty much got it. There's always new challenges every day, but in a lot of the situations, I'm like, yeah, that's pretty much all I can do and all I should be able to do.
Right. And I think kind of in our roles, we can only do so much. Like there's always something more, I guess, we could do. But the idea is that like we're guiding our clients or even presenting them with the choices that they have to make, because sometimes they don't see the alternative choices in their life. They just think they're stuck. So maybe I look at the role as helping guide them into figuring out what their other options in life are and seeing if there's a way to get there. And as you said, like when you were younger in your career, you had those dilemmas about like, what could you personally do? And I was having talks with interns yesterday just about that. Like it's not going to be about you. This is about the client and what they need and what works for them at the time and what they are ready to accept and what they're ready to do, what they're ready to change. And you can be as great as you want to be and as great as you probably are, and a person can still remain stuck for years on end, because our role is not to make them change. It's to help guide them and help them understand their options.
Yeah. And as I work with interns also, and sometimes they're in a social work capacity and sometimes they're in a therapy capacity. And I repeatedly hear the interns' frustration. They're like, I did A, B, and C, and I said A, B, and C, and I gave them A, B, and C resource, and then they come back 2 weeks later in their exact same place. I'm like, they didn't make one call? Nope. I'm like, well, you know, if you jumped into their life and lived it for them, you could turn it around, but then it's not their life.
That's not therapy.
Right.
That's not therapy, right?
Right. No, yeah, just give me your life. I'll take it over. Send me your child. I will raise them.
That's enmeshment, codependency, and caretaking.
Well, and it's also not good. I'm sure we all have done too much for clients. You know, then you realize, gosh, you know what? I just did all of that. They didn't do any of it. And the same is true for kids, you know, or other people in your life, our friends and family. Sometimes we overextend and we do too much of what stuff that they could do for themselves. And in the end, it's just, I always feel like, well, then I get burned, and I take that on myself. I can stop doing too much for people.
Oh, yeah. And I think in families, we see that all the time. There's usually maybe one person in a family who is like the go-to person. And that person can look super strong. They can look super self-reliant and all that stuff. And they might be the person who turns up in our offices going like, man, I just need someone to understand that, like, I don't want to do everything. But somehow we create those situations. So I think there's a lot of people out there that can relate to that.
Yeah.
You know, because of course we have our perspective as a therapist. We see the same dynamics go on in families all the time. I think a lot of people can relate to feeling, as you said, like empty-handed at times when you've overextended yourself and you just go, oh, okay, and now like what kind of what comes back to me when I need something. You know, you want to know that you're in a mutually supportive relationship. And when you tend to be a helper, as you know, there are usually at least one in a family. When you tend to have to be a helper, you can have this propensity to help everyone, and then nobody really realizes that you might need some support at times.
Yeah, that's the thing I hear a lot. It's like, I've helped this person, that person, this person, that person, and now I'm in need, and nobody else sees that I'm in need and they don't help me. And it's usually because they're putting up this, I don't know if it's a strong front, but a self-sufficient front, and nobody even knows that you have a need because you're not used to putting it out there.
And I think then, like, going back to this scene too, like when I was saying that, like, Rocky needs Adonis as much as Adonis needs Rocky, is that, you know, truth be told, Rocky lives a life. I don't know if we're going to cover the scene about his son, but he has a son who now lives in Canada because it was too hard for him to live with Rocky's legacy in Philadelphia. So he took off altogether. So you get that they're estranged, and Rocky's a widow and he's still in love with his wife, who's passed on a long time ago. He's lonely, and he's been touted and supported and been this great role model for people, and his life has fallen flat. And he looks pretty lonely, and like everything is dark about, like, when they show the interiors of his home and his apartment, the restaurant, everything's kind of dark and gloomy. And you kind of get that that's probably how he's been living. So when Adonis walks in, although Rocky has never trained anybody in a long time and kind of says, oh, I don't do that stuff anymore, he comes alive again when he does it.
Yeah, we get another picture of what Rocky's support personnel or support people, the significant people in his life, when he heads over to the cemetery and has this conversation.
Okay, here we go, Paulie. Happy birthday, my friend. I didn't forget you. Your favorite. Miss you, pal. You're Adrian, my darling. The best. Okay, Adrian, God. It's getting harder to walk up this hill. What does that mean? Anyway, it's a good day today. It's a good day. Got no problems. Bills are paid. The only thing is that it's tough to sleep at night. Sometimes my back. No matter what you do, it catches up to you. Anyway, shall we see what's new in the world today?
I'm not much of a cemetery visitor. The only times I really ever go to a cemetery is when someone's being put in the ground. I don't go back and visit. Matter of fact, I think my great-grandmother is buried in town or something, in the local cemetery. So, but that's how Rocky is. That shows you how few people he has in his life. Well, and also the fact that he loved Paulie, who would be his brother-in-law, and he loved Adrian so much, and he would just go and he would bring him, I don't know if it was whiskey or whatever, and a flower for Adrian. He was able to get some support just by having those conversations. Are you a cemetery visitor?
I have lost a brother and my father, and they're both buried in two different places and in other states. So when I do go back to New York, I do have moments like that with my brother's grave site, but I only go back every couple of years. But partly why I go back is to go and visit the grave site. My father's in Florida, and I have not been there since he passed, but I think about that. I'm like, maybe I should take a trip and just go visit him at the grave site. But I kind of like to have my conversations with him anyway, you know, and I've learned because geographically I'm not going to be going to the cemetery all the time, that, if I want to have a conversation with my dad, I'll have one. I don't need to be sitting there staring at a tombstone for it.
I think in America, at least Anglo, whatever European American culture, we don't have the rituals around death and the afterlife of that many cultures have. And so oftentimes when I'm working with clients who have lost someone or whatever, I try to help them contain it or make a ritual out of things, like around birthdays or death days or whatever, whether it is going to the cemetery, which I think is great because it contains it, because those people are in your mind and in your heart all the time. And then you're able to say, all right, well, I visited, I talked, or I had this on this special day, I'm going to release these balloons or put out the pictures or whatever. And it really helps to process. I mean, because grief is never done. You're always going to miss someone. They're always going to be part of your heart and life. And if you do it either through a cemetery or through some other ritual, it helps you when they jump into your head again. It's like, okay, well, their birthday's coming up or whatever.
Right. And I think it's helpful to, help people, as you said, kind of come up with the ritual. I always like to know, like, how do they think about death? What do they believe happens? Because we can't assume that anybody's idea is going to be the same as mine or same as yours, as anybody else, especially. And then when you go through it with people that you're deeply close to and you have to make sense of what happens after death, you come up with what works for you. And I know my own ideas is that it just helps me feel better about it.
Yeah.
I don't really have deep religious beliefs about anything, but if I think that I can sit at the beach and talk to my dad and he might hear it, and that works for me, it makes me feel better. I think it's good for people to kind of make sense of it in a way that helps them heal from it.
I think it also activates kind of what I would call those tapes, because you can kind of, when you're talking to your dad, you can kind of hear what his opinion of it is.
Yeah. And of course I can still hear his voice and how he would call me. He would call me something that no one else did, and I'd hear him like that. And it's just nice and peaceful, makes me feel okay. And then I'm like, okay, and then I can get back to my life.
Yeah, and that's what it is. And then when he pops in your head at other times, you're like, okay, well, I just talked to you at the beach. I'll go, whatever. So you know what I mean? Because otherwise, the grief sometimes can be so pervasive to every aspect of your life on a much, much smaller level. I had to put my dog down this week, and he was 11.
Oh, this week? I'm sorry to hear that.
11 and a half. And it's different, the dynamics of grief when you have other people around, right? Because my kids never known a time without him, and they're way torn up. So, I was emotional, but not as emotional as they were. Even the past couple days as I've driven around, I'm like, oh, there's a yellow lab. Or I'll walk into the living room just half expecting to hear the dog bark at the door. Or I think my other dog's going through grief too, because when I put the bowl of food down in the morning, she looks down the hallway waiting for the other dog to come running around the corner, which is how it always happened.
Absolutely. I've seen that happen. I had a couple of birds at one time, and one of the birds died, and the other one just turned so sad and lonely, and just the behavior changed the minute the girl died. The girl bird died. I think when you talk about people getting stuck in grief, and I don't know that we would say Rocky is stuck in his grief process. He's made sense of it. It's unfortunate that Rocky's life turned so socially isolated that everybody he loved died, even Apollo Creed, right? Apollo, his trainer, his friend, his wife, and then his son is gone, so that's where I see that as very sad. I don't know that he's stuck in his grief. He's made sense of it, but I think a lot of people get stuck in grief. And that's when it really infiltrates everything in life, because they can't really make decisions or move on. I've met people whose a parent has died, and they literally cannot make a decision about what to do with their life, because they say, well, I don't know what my mom would say. She always told me what to do. And it's like, well, you have to figure it out. You have to make a decision. You've got this one to make. Figure it out. You have to kind of even just tell yourself, make something up and have her tell it to you if it makes sense for you.
Just keep moving, right? Get moving is part of the challenge. Okay, so the next one is where Rocky is training, actually kind of giving a little bit of a lecture to Adonis, and he talks about who is your toughest opponent.
Just go get the chicken. It's not that big a deal.
Come here.
Oh my God. It's pretty good. Chickens are slowing down. All right, Donnie, get into your stance. Make a small target. Turn sideways. Okay. You see this guy here staring back at you?
Yeah?
That's your toughest opponent. Every time you get into the ring, that's who you're going against. I believe that in boxing, and I do believe that in life. Okay?
That kind of sums up everything for me. Because no matter what I've gone through, whether it was my tumor, my surgery, other family issues or kid issues or marital issues or whatever, I'm always running that in my head like, okay, well, I can choose to think about it like this, or I can choose to think about it like that. So I find that when I get down, it's all about me. Who's my toughest opponent? Well, me. That's the only person that I have in my head at the time, usually when I'm struggling or wrestling in the middle of the night or whatever it is, with a certain issue. And I have to always try to find that choice and that cognitive change that I can make. And Rocky kind of boils it down. There it is. Toughest opponent right there in the mirror.
Right. And I have a painting of the girl in the mirror. It's a Picasso thing, and it just is like this reflection, and one girl looks one way, the other one looks another, but it's the same girl. We always have this distorted view, I think, if we are, I wouldn't say we all, but many of us are very self-critical, and we can have this really distorted view of who we really are, what we really do, or how we really look, and it really doesn't really reflect what other people might see in us. We are our own worst critic.
Right, your toughest opponent. So, Rocky, for all his, I just got it, like a slow brain.
He's very wise.
Yeah, he is terribly wise. And, here's another one, and I think I'm going to use this line because what happens is Adonis is in a fight, in a training thing, and their emotions get the best of them, and then Rocky talks to Adonis really quickly right here.
What you mean? Take this little shots, though, huh? Take this glove off right now. This is my gym. Take the glove off right now. Take your soft ass back to LA. You ain't ready yet. This is my gym. This gym.
Call it a learning curve.
Ain't no learning.
Hey. You know what? You can't learn anything you're talking. That's a fact of life. You know what I mean? As long as you're talking, you're not listening, go apologize. You guys are on the same damn team, okay? There you go.
You good.
Good.
You good.
All right. Now let's go to work.
I do love that in general about men, is that we'll punch each other in the face and call each other names, and we're like, all right, we good? We're good. And we go on, But yeah, you can't learn if you're talking. And I thought that is brilliant.
Right, you're not listening if you're talking. And it's so basic, but but many of us don't get it. And I think, when we do relationship work with people, that comes up all the time with couples. It's like, please listen to, because you're not going to hear what the other person is saying, which means you're not going to learn what they have to share with you if you're already formulating and jumping in before they've finished talking.
I think that is the biggest couple skill that I teach regularly, is just reflective listening. It's like, okay, what'd you hear? Now, and just say it in a way that lets them know that you understand where they're coming from. Not that you agree, not that you are not going to change your mind or you're not going to change. Just let them know that you're heard, because that's where the escalation of arguing starts. We get the opportunity, if you want to say, to see that type of thing all the time, where couples are just talking over each other, and you're like, there's no way that the end of this conversation is going to be, oh yeah, I see what you mean, I agree now, or whatever. Because as soon as people are just talking and they just want to be heard and not to listen, then nothing good is ever going to come out of it. So as we move on to the next place, I wish that, so Adonis, and they show the development of the relationship. Adonis gets a girlfriend. I mean, this could be the Rocky story. I mean, it's just is Rocky again. So, this is his Adrian.
The next generation.
The next generation.
And it literally is, right?
yeah, literally. And I wish they'd explored this relationship more, because every time she's on screen, first of all, she says smart stuff, and, she has heart and passion, and she's clear about what goes on in her life, and she's a really solid person. So I wish they'd explored that relationship a little bit more. And but this is them talking when she discovers who his dad is.
I didn't lie.
You might as well. If you told me that your dad was some fighter, you didn't say he was the most famous fighter to ever live.
People look at me differently when they know. They look at that power differently too.
Yeah, Donnie, but I'm not people. I don't care about that shit. I do care about you keeping it 100 with me, though.
Well, listen. Hey, you're right, okay? No, seriously, look, you... 100% honesty from here on out.
All right, so his wife, that's not your mom?
Apollo had an affair with my mom. And she died when I was young. I bounced around foster care for a couple years. In and out of juvie. And then Marianne, she tracked me down and took me in. Anything else? Ask me.
How many females have you been with before me?
Anything else? Look, Bianca, come on now, you different.
How?
When I'm around you, I feel like I know you my whole life. Tell me you don't feel the same way about me.
Whatever, that's passion, that's infatuation, that phase.
Well, I can't see that happen.
Why not?
You motivate me.
Okay, so I'm just motivation
Are
to
you gonna find a problem with everything I say?
No, I want to find the real in what you're saying. Don't worry, it's cool. Maybe you're just motivation to me, too.
Oh, really? I don't mind that. What?
You do look like him, though.
I hate that. This get on my nerves.
You know, there were a few conversations that they had that really pointed out how old and white I am. Because she,
what do you mean?
Well, because she's like, I want you to be 100 with me. I'm like, 100?
Yeah, keep it 100
And
with
then
me,
there was something, and there was some. Oh, that's phase. She said, you know, that's not a phase we are going through. It's phase.
Yeah.
But there were you could see how smart she is, and also it gets back to what we talked about. I think in our last episode where I said, do you think 100% honesty is important at all times?
You know, I was waiting for you to bring that up again.
Yeah, well, that's
right, because I don't.
No,
but.
you can't. Well, and she proves it in her next question, right? Her first question is, so who is this woman? Oh, she's kind of like what would be your stepmom. And then her next question is, how many females you've been with before me? She's like, as the door's open, I'm going for 100%.
Exactly what I was going to say. Doors open. So, right. And that's where, you know, as he was very good at skirting around that, like it didn't matter. Just like anything, there's nice ways to nuance how much you need to tell your partner about some things that happened before you got together, because it really doesn't matter, you know. And then on that end, I guess it really doesn't matter. So if you wanted to tell them the number, you could too. But
you could.
I'd wonder what would be the purpose of that.
Yeah, I'd be concerned that that number would get thrown around. Like if they're calling my number at the deli, she'd be like, "Oh, there's your number again." I'm like, Great, thanks, honey. But that was also the communication that they had there, and we're really digging. But this was a rich conversation. You know, he said, "Are you going to have a problem with everything I say?" You know, oh, so now I'm just motivation to you, because you know she's looking for, well, how important am I in your life? And he says, "You're motivation," and she says, "Oh, just motivation." He says, "You're going to have a problem with everything I say," and that's what happens. Is this
because it wasn't good enough to be. What was it? Infatuation, right? She said, "Oh, that's just infatuation." Then it was motivation. That wasn't enough. Yeah.
Right, and then that's why I kept it going, because they end up laughing at the end, because you know they kind of like, okay, we know what we're doing here, and we're not taking it all that serious. I don't know. The communication was really good between them, and you know I think she's there at the end and supports him after they go through some hard times together, but. It was very astute of her and mature to be able to have these pieces of the conversation. And when she says, "I'm looking for the real," basically in what you're saying, it's both and. You know, it's not an either or. You don't feel one way about her or another way about her or the state of their relationship. And she's looking for that one right answer, which I think we often do. You know, it's hard to understand in someone we're having a relationship with that they can feel both ways about my sister, my mother, you know, this situation, moving, this job. You know, you're like, well, so you want me to quit my job? No, I just think this is what I don't like about your job, that it takes too much of your time, or they treat you like this, or whatever. And it's like, okay. So oftentimes in relationships, we're like, I just be honest, because I don't think those two things can fit together.
Right. Well, and we sometimes live in two different spaces in a relationship. I know I saw something the other day and was teaching on it yesterday, where a couple, you know, a person was really committed on one scale in the relationship, committed to staying, and on the other hand they endorsed having contemplated leaving. And the person asked, well, how can that be? How can they be committed and also contemplate leaving? And it's like, well, they have a lot of conflict in this relationship, and when they have conflict, the person catastrophizes and is in a place of, I gotta get out of here. Like, this isn't working for me. Oh my God, how did I get here? What are we doing in this relationship? The fight or flight response kicks in. But in general, this person has been married a long time. They're very committed. They're good family, all this stuff. Like, she's not going anywhere. But you can live in those two different places. And I think many people do. It may not be so dramatic, but I think often we live in two different places, whether it's the beginning of a new relationship where you're like, oh, I can just take it all casual, or, you know, but then you have the relationship anxiety that comes up that says, but I wonder what we're really doing here, or long-term stuff that happens where, you know, not every day is going to be a great day. Not every day is even going to be one that you want to be around them in, but you love them and you're committed, and there's enough reasons to stay that you don't leave. So you do live in two different places.
Yeah, I would think that I wouldn't want my wife to stay in our marital relationship simply because she didn't think she had a choice, right? So the fact that the choice is available, it's out there, and you're still choosing to be in the relationship is even more powerful. I mean, that's what we talked about earlier on this show was, when you feel like you don't have a choice, well, you do have a choice. Yeah. You may not like the other alternative, but it also comes down to, how we're raised, right? I mean, I was raised, my parents are still together. My wife's family, her mom was basically raised in foster care and had, of several different marital relationships. And so when we would, early on in our marriage, when we would struggle, she'd be like, oh, I don't know if this is working. I don't know if we can make this work. And I'm like, what? Is there an option? Because from my experience and my upbringing, there's not an option, or at least an option that I'm willing to consider at this point. So it's not like I was, denying that I could get out of a relationship. But people respond differently. And had I heard her saying, I don't know if this is going to work, I could have gone, oh, well, then you don't want to make it work. And then we could have just built on it. But it was almost like something really foreign to me. It's like, leaving is an option just because of the dishes. I didn't know about that. I promise I'll do the dishes better. So yeah, there's a lot of different dynamics. When you're having those conversations with your partner, and if someone is considering, gosh, do I want to stay in the relationship or not? I don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing. Now, if you live in that world for a long time and you're not talking to them about it, then I think that's when you really have an issue.
Right. You live in two different places for periods of time, brief periods of time. I think you're in those two different places. Like during an argument, you're in those two places, because on one hand, as soon as you cool down, you're going to be like, well, no, I'm not going to go anywhere. But in that argument, you're like, I got to get the heck out of here. And so no, I think if you're perpetually in those places, I think you really need to sort through what's going on for you, because that living in that place of dissonance is not healthy, and in fact wears on your body and wears on your health and everything else. If you live in, they call that relationship ambivalence. When you live in the I could stay or I could go, people become actually very unhealthy.
Yeah, because they're not talking about it at all. Speaking of unhealthy, we gotta have our drama. I mean, there's almost no one else left in the original Rocky crew to die. So Rocky, unfortunately, goes to the doctor, and this is what happens.
Well, we went through your test results, and your biopsy came back showing signs of large cell non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
What's that do?
Well, it's a form of cancer. I know that sounds scary, but the good news is we caught it early. However, we will have to remove the tumor in your lymph nodes and start chemotherapy immediately.
My wife tried that.
Mr. Balboa, as far as options for treatment, this is the best plan of action.
No, I understand, but my wife tried that, and I don't think I want to do it. Didn't turn out so good, but it's okay.
With treatment, you'll still have a very good chance of recovery. Without it...
I'm okay with it, really.
Well, at least take these. It has information on your diagnosis and options for treatment. We can start...
Thank you very much. Oh, listen, I appreciate it if you wouldn't say nothing to nobody, okay?
First thing I thought was, well, she can't say anything.
I know.
Those are the HIPAA laws. You're not allowed to broadcast
right.
that.
Just in case you were going to call the news or something, you know. Don't tell him Rocky's got cancer.
And it was it was so interesting to me that his flash, he's obviously a quick decision maker, because he's like, nope, not doing treatment. I've seen it. And I wanted to just like scream through the screen, hey, you know how far cancer research and cancer treatment has come since Adrian died? It's like, give it a shot.
And that scene, it truly, like, I was affected, and like it was very sad when you saw it, because you really understood just how he just so longed to kind of like accept that, okay, at some point I'll move on and be with my wife again, in his world of how he believes about stuff. So this was okay for him to accept that he wasn't going to make it, that this was definitely going to be a death sentence, and it wasn't going to be a long one.
Yeah, and it was almost like it showed me how little support he has in his life, how few other people. Because if I was Rocky in that scene, I'd be like, oh man, what's going to happen with my wife? What's going to happen with my kids? What's going to happen with my career? He was like, well, that's it. I've seen my wife do it. It doesn't work. So we're not going to do any treatment for this. And he's confronted with that when he tries to sneak around. But before we get to that, it's the fact that he wanted to keep it a secret was really interesting to me, because I think that, I don't know if everybody does this, but I think a lot of people do. When you get difficult news, or when something happens that you're not proud about within yourself, or in a situation, maybe you made an error, and then, your big job is to keep it hidden, or you don't want to tell somebody in your life, and then maybe a year down the road, you're telling everybody. So, and what has changed with is how you process it, how you understand it, how you make it make sense in the regular world, and how you, maybe in my scenario, how you realize, yep, I'm flawed. I did make that mistake, or I do have that diagnosis that is part of who I am, and you've kind of integrated it, and then it's okay to talk about it. But a lot of times people's initial reaction is, bad thing about me, let's keep it hidden.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and so much of Rocky and his legacy is about pride, right? I mean, and so for him to have that now he's sick and he's going to die, I mean, really the only person that may get hurt by this at this point is Adonis, right? Or a couple of other people that are still peripherally in his life. But I think so often, as you said, like, we need time to process. So whether this lasts for him 2 days of processing, or, he never tells another person and just drops dead one day. But that's the idea of what you get. You get that he's just going to live his life, and, is just going to fade out when he does. And
then Rocky goes to the gym, and of course he has those pamphlets in his pocket, and, Adonis happens upon them. And this is the conversation they have stemming from that.
Man, you sound crazy, man. Give me the keys. I'll take you to the hospital right now.
I'm not crazy at all. If I could take everything that was good and put it into a bowl or something and say, hey, here, I'd like to buy one more day with my wife, I'd do it. I would die a happy man right then. Not gonna happen. So, everything I got is moved on, and I'm here. But you know what? It's okay. Because I said to myself, if I break, if I'm hurt, whatever, I ain't gonna fix it. Why bother?
And I'm just some bum that's living in your crib, just nothing.
You're a good kid and a good fighter. But you got your whole future ahead of you. Mine? Back there, like all them guys on that wall. In the back, in the past, we're going nowhere. I am to you just an old trainer. That's what brought us together, We're not a real family. That was just in our heads, kid.
The biggest sock in the gut.
Yeah, my heart broke for like the little foster kid in him when he said we're not family, because he of course is.
Yeah, I think throughout the whole movie, even before and after this, he calls him Unc, for uncle.
Right, uncle. Yeah. And so that's the struggle, is that no matter how close you get, someone could still reject you. And so that was very sad. And then for Rocky, with if he could have all the good things and trade him in for one day with his wife, and he's never going to get that, he's ready to go. Right. And of course Adonis already loves him and doesn't want him to go. Yeah, he's not ready to lose him.
And I think we see this a lot with people, and feel it ourselves. It's kind of, it re-traumatizes Rocky. All of a sudden he's drawn back to that relationship with his wife, and that he wanted and loved so much. And he's like, hey, if I break, if I'm gonna die, then I would trade everything, all of my whole life, just to have another day with her. It really brought it to the forefront of his thinking. And I think that happens a lot when people experience a trauma that's similar to another trauma. Everything floods in and they feel overwhelmed.
Oh, right. And you can't help, for what he went through with his wife, we can imagine that he couldn't help but envision all of that horrible stuff going on for himself, and kind of, I imagine you have to suck it up and be the toughest you're ever going to be if you think you're going to go through a fight like that with cancer and still probably lose. In his case, his thinking is, I'm still going to lose even if I fight this battle.
Yeah, and who do I have to fight for? And
yeah,
what do
why
have
would
to-"
I fight?
Right.
Right.
And Adonis is saying, me?
Yeah,
Maybe we
please
can
don't
work that
leave
out.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and it was after that Adonis goes and makes some stupid decisions out of rash, his emotion, and so he's kind of raw, and so he goes kind of kicks back into his, before the movie starts, where he's the big fighter, and you can't talk bad to me, and I'm going to stand up for myself.
The street kid turns back up.
Yeah.
He regresses a bit, which is what happens when we all have a tendency to do that. We love someone, something terrible is going to happen, we're helpless, and we know that they've also just said, I also am going to reject you just so that we can have this distance before I die.
Yeah.
And he regresses in his behavior and kind of goes back to being that tough street kid with no sense of boundaries and things. He gets real tough.
Yeah, I wonder, I was just, as you were talking, I was thinking Adonis was at his worst when he was in, juvenile hall and nobody cared about him. Mm-hmm. Then he found purpose by kind of basically being adopted, and he lived a good life. Even then he finds Rocky and someone cares about him because he had to reject mom or stepmom in order to go do the boxing route. And then when Rocky says he's going to leave, he goes right back. So when he doesn't have anybody who cares about him or loves him, he goes into this hardcore, nobody's going to touch me. I'm just going to fight everybody who looks at me sideways.
Right. And that's why I was saying, like my heart broke for the little hurt kid inside him in that moment, because he's there waiting to come out, and there he was just let out again.
Okay. So now, again, Rocky turns into a very wise man when they have this conversation.
I know a lot of cops, and they said your friend's locked up.
Friends? Just a trainer to me, right?
I'm sorry about what I said to you back at the gym. It was just me talking. I didn't mean it.
Well, you need to stay away from me.
Listen.
Man, don't touch me.
Come on, what?
Get your hands off me, old man. Get your sick ass out of here. Leave. You ain't here talking like you my family. You got my real family killed.
I ain't leaving till I tell you what's on my mind. You hate me, that's what it is. Or maybe you're mad with somebody who ain't here, Donnie, who can't defend himself. I understand what you're going through, young man. I swear, I've been there. And I know what it's like to feel abandoned and be mad at everything. And you're a better person than that. Forgive him, because there's nothing you can do about it. It's taking a toll on you. You're still caught in the shadow. You gotta move, Donnie.
Just leave, man.
So Rocky the therapist, I think he was trained in de-escalation training because Adonis comes at him, gives him both barrels, says, "You're not my family, you're just a trainer to me," and he says, "Get out of here, you sick old man." And Rocky's like, "You know what? I'm actually not going to leave, and I don't think you're mad at me. I think you're mad at your dad." And it's like, wow, I think maybe we could build like a website of all Rocky quotes. And so you punch in whatever psychological cognitive thing you're going through, and it'll just bring up a quote from Rocky, because he's an excellent therapist. My goodness.
That's a good. That's good. Yeah, I mean, he really, and as you said, de-escalating, right? He stayed, and then he went in very calm and supportive and loving, and even as Adonis keeps rejecting him, he just stays a constant, like, "Hey, I am family. It's okay." And
yeah, I think one of the tricks in what Rocky does is he doesn't get hooked. Right, you leave, you sick old man. You're not my family. I mean, Rocky starts by apologizing with that. But and that's I think what we teach couples or anybody who's having relationships or conflicts in relationships is like, don't get sucked in, don't get distracted by in this case the sick old man comment.
Right, the emotional reaction.
Yeah, so don't get drawn in. And Rocky just he ignores that, moves on, and says, "Here's what I think's really going on. And by the way, I still care about you." And that's what he's saying by visiting him there in jail. He's saying, "I still care about you. You can't drive me away with your anger. You don't scare me. You can say whatever hurtful things you want, and I'm here because that's what family's all about."
going to say he's a good dad. When you
Yeah.
look at that, all those things you're saying, I'm like, that's a really good dad,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
do that. And so he really does fulfill that, even if they haven't really sorted it out. Like, he truly is like filling in as the father figure for him.
Yeah, maybe they should just like have a boxing match and then the winner, and then they shake hands and they can move on. We don't have to talk about it. We just have to work it out. But they do make a pact, and they do, and they definitely are really good for each other in this one. And I think it's Adonis who proposes what he thinks they ought to do, because Adonis cares about Rocky and Rocky cares about Adonis.
I mean, what I look like? Letting you train me while you sit around and die. Just like any other fight.
This fight, I've seen it before. It gets as bad as it can get. And most of the time, you don't win it.
But I don't care. I ain't training if you don't get the treatment. So if I fight, you fight.
He convinces Rocky to get some treatment, and the subsequent scenes are really sweet, because they're loving, and that Rocky is there getting his chemo treatment, and Adonis is doing push-ups and jumping jacks and all this stuff while Rocky's sitting there in the chair receiving the chemo treatment. It really is sweet and loving, and shows just how much they both love each other and how much they truly need each other.
And yeah, it gets back to what we were talking about earlier in the show, which is that exchange that is necessary in a relationship.
Yeah.
Before it was Rocky pouring into Adonis, and Adonis being the one who was receiving, and then Rocky was in need, and Adonis steps up, and then they are able to work symbiotically together towards a goal. Or a couple goals.
Right. In fact, Adonis says, kind of like, what kind of jerk would I be if I let you train me while I sit here and watch you die? Like, what kind of schmuck is that? What kind of human being would I be if I would allow that to happen? So if you're going to train me and you're going to get me great, then I need you to fight for yourself too, and I'll support you.
Right. I'll help you out. I mean, it was hard to watch when, Rocky's being sick, and anybody who's been around someone who has cancer and is getting the treatments, you're like, man, this is brutal. They often say that the treatment's worse than the cure, or the cure's worse than the treatment. No, cure's worse than the treatment is worse.
The treatment's worse than the actual illness sometimes.
There you go. Now we see that's our symbiotic relationship.
That's where we'll go.
Yeah, we're working together there. So it is hard to see someone go through that, and it was hard in the movie, but they didn't spend a lot of time on it. And I guess we should say he fights, and there's a boxing match, and then there's something that's
there's definitely a good 15 minutes or so of straight out boxing. 15, 20, I think. I kind of fast forwarded through it, because then I'm like, okay, right, this is the part of the movie I wouldn't have been watching anyway. You watch, and I kept saying, okay, does it look good? What's happening? And then you get it, yes. And so Adonis wins.
Yeah, I think, he doesn't lose. He goes the distance, and like in the first Rocky, there's a split decision, and the champ keeps his title. So he doesn't see. That's how much you paid attention.
That's how much I paid attention. I was like, oh, okay, and then I flipped to the next scene because I wanted, the iconic scene comes up.
Yeah.
So now we have one more scene at the end of Creed, and so we've got that. The fight is over, and now it's the iconic Rocky Balboa stairs scene.
They got the Philly stairs, and kind of a new take on it. So here it is.
No breaks. We rest at the top.
Submit it.
Nah, that's what you asked for, right? Let's go, one step at a time. Come on.
One step at a time. Who told you that?
Some old guy.
No, I meant that for you, not for me. I think they added a few more steps. I don't know.
Almost there.
I want to take these last two.
Almost there. How you feeling?
Oh, good. Really good.
You right there, old man?
Yeah. Nice view. If you look hard enough, you can see your whole life from up here.
How does it look?
Not bad at all. And you?
Not bad at all.
You know, I thought about that of kind of a meta way too. I was thinking Sylvester Stallone, not Rocky, but Sylvester Stallone can probably see his whole life from the top of those stairs.
Oh yeah, I mean, just that whole place for him as a human being, separate of the character, is just probably as you said, just something that it just means so much for his own life. I mean, it was his career was based on the scene that started it all around those stairs.
You know, one of the things that really struck me from this is that how their relationship had grown and the why it had grown. Because, what is it that makes a relationship so valuable? I mean, I value my buddy Scott, who I have been friends with since high school. Mm-hmm. And what really does it is the fact that you get through difficult times and you come out the other side. It's like that investment of I'm gonna stay with this, and that's what we see in this relationship with Adonis and Rocky is they got through some difficult times. If you take the difficult times out of this movie, then the relationship almost seems kind of thin. You almost have to go through these difficult times and come out the other side to make the relationship that much more valuable.
Well, and certainly his deeper meaning when we know that they learned so much about each other through the difficult times. They learned that they are family. They learned that they can count on each other. They learned that they can support each other, even going up the stairs. So funny, that scene is so iconic that I was hearing the Rocky music. Yeah. Like I was like, where did it go? Because I thought when I watched it that I heard the Rocky music when they were doing it. So, but that he's coaching him up the stairs at this point. It's turn the tables, that he's some old man told me that mm-hmm. He says, and one step in front of the other. It's such a even just this whole metaphor for them. They go one step at a time and they get out at the top,
and you can see your whole life from there. Hey, if people are interested in hearing more about the other episodes and more about Shrink to Shrink, how do they go ahead and find us there, Colleen?
Right. Well, we are on Twitter, and we're on Twitter a lot. So we're at Shrink to Shrink on Twitter, and that's with the 2 in the middle. And then we have shrinktoshrink.com, and of course you can find us on iTunes. But I think we're both really active on Twitter, so give us a shout out. And we're also on Facebook there too. So there's lots of places to find us, but definitely you can listen to us on any of the podcast directories that, and of course iTunes is the one where you're probably easiest to find us.
So find us there and reach out, and we'd love to interact with you. And I hear, Colleen, that you are actually encouraging people to meet you face to face at some event that's coming up. What is that? What is that?
I'm going to Podcast Movement next week, July 4th to the 9th. I'm going. I think the conference is actually the 6th to the 8th. And I am, looking forward to meeting all sorts of other podcasters, and have been getting around with a few of them, talking to them, Skyping with them, doing a little, some episodes and things. And I'm just really excited. The whole podcast thing, this is how we even know each other. Yeah. Like, we've never met in person, but here we are Skyping with each other and doing all these shows. And, I've loved the podcast community. It's been so great and so much fun, and feel like you're really part of something. And so, I'd invite any of the podcasters that are going to Podcast Movement. If you listen to this, certainly shout out to me. We're at Shrink to Shrink. You can also find me at Dr. Colleen Mullen. And Courtney, you are at Quadfather
at
MFT?
Quadfather MFT. I tried to get Quadcast. No, they 2011 was the last time they tweeted. I tried to get Quadfather. No, they're like 2010. I'm like, really? My two handles that I should get. So I'm at Quadfather MFT, and I'm not going to Podcast Move, but I'm jealous. Yeah. And speaking of the podcast community, that is the main thing. No one's getting rich on these things. We have a good time, meet other podcasters, people with similar interests that are interesting to talk to, and we can do it in a casual way. I think you just recorded on World of Row.
Right. So I talked to him. We're going to do a 2-parter. So after I get back from Podcast Movement, we're going to do another episode at probably around the end of July, talking more about more psych stuff. I think he wanted to pick my brain a little bit, but we're going to talk about my experience at Podcast Movement and everything. And I just did Podcasting 101 with The Angry Ginger.
Yeah, I'm
jealous. And that one came out last week.
Yeah.
So that was fun.
Yeah, I've been giving him a hard time. I'm like, how is it that you and I have done shows together, and then Colleen jumps in front of me and gets on Podcasting 101? So
see, I thought you were already on there.
No, well, one would think, wouldn't they? That's
think so.
at S7 Days a Geek. So the number 7, S7 Days a Geek. Hit up the Angry Ginger. Tell him I need to be on Podcasting 101. You guys had a great show. A lot of times I'll pop different podcasts around and I'll jump. I listen to you guys all the way straight through. That was really interesting. I had lots of things I learned about you.
Oh, well, good. And that was a fun episode.
I'm not going to ask you to edit anything because apparently you don't touch Audacity or anything along those lines. So
No, and I'm so grateful to you, Courtney, for doing all that you do to make this show happen, because I feel like I just get to watch a movie and show up and shoot the breeze with you about it, and you do all the background work. So I truly appreciate all that.
Well, I honestly wouldn't have it any other way. That's where I have fallen in love with editing. So
well, great. And we should give one last thing, that I also host the Coaching Through Chaos podcast, and you also host the Quadcast podcast.
Right. So if you want more of either of us, you can go there. You're kind of more in a role where you're the interviewer on your show, and I'm just a goofy nut. But you bring a lot of good topics and things. Man, I just keep retweeting and I listen to them, and you're publishing them. I'm like, man, these are good topics. There's a lot of things that people can learn about. So, a matter of fact, I was in my living room yesterday. My dad was saying, well, we listened to that whole Martian thing. I think we're going to watch the movie again. And that lady, your co-host lady, she has a show? I'm like, yeah, just Coaching Through Chaos. Where do I get that? I said, well, you just, on iTunes, Coaching Through Chaos. And he's like, I don't have a phone that does that. Can she put it on a CD for me? Dad, I'll help you out. Don't worry, old man. So.
Well, he can just find that at coachingthroughchaos.com also.
He could probably type that in. That goes into Google, right? Just put that in the Google there, and then she'll pop up. Yeah, Dad. Yeah, Dad.
Yeah.
That'll be fine.
Yeah, so everybody can find us and listen to things. So my show's a self-help show and I interview experts, authors, entrepreneurs, and people with really interesting stories of resiliency in their lives. Like, those are some of the most powerful episodes. And I'm building that as an online resource database, like an audio database for information for people that are interested in some psychological aspects of life. And so
and for
so
people,
that comes out every 2 weeks.
And for people who can't read. So that works really good. You can get, just listen to it on audio. Or don't like to read. I don't like to read. I read too much. So anyway, that's all the time we have. We will schedule an appointment 4 weeks from now to the end of the next month.
That's right. See you the next session.
And do you take insurance here?
This is not really covered under insurance right now.
Dang it. All right. Well, I'll write you a check. And as for the people who are listening, we will save room on the movie couch for you.